Imagine this. You sit down and tell yourself, this is it. I'm going to change. You open your laptop. You make a plan. You feel motivated, focused, even a little excited. This time feels different. But then, a few days later, something shifts. You wake up and don't feel like doing it. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow. You get distracted, delay, and slowly drift away from the plan. And before you realize it, you're back exactly where you started. Not because you couldn't do it, but because you didn't. And that creates a strange kind of frustration. Because deep down, you know you're capable. So why does it keep happening? Why do you keep getting in your own way? This is what self-sabotage looks like. And the most confusing part is, it doesn't feel like sabotage. It feels normal. It feels reasonable. It feels like you. Most people think self-sabotage is about laziness. They believe they just need more discipline, more motivation, more willpower. But if that were true, you would already have fixed it. Because you've tried before. You've pushed yourself. You've made plans. You've promised, this time I won't quit. And yet, somehow, the same pattern repeats. So clearly, the problem isn't effort. The problem is that your brain is working against your goals. Not because it wants to hurt you, but because it's trying to protect you. Your brain is not designed to make you successful. It's designed to keep you safe. And sometimes growth doesn't feel safe. It feels uncertain. It feels uncomfortable. It feels unfamiliar. And your brain treats unfamiliar things like potential threats. So instead of pushing you forward, it quietly pulls you back to what feels known, back to what feels predictable, even if that place is not where you want to be. That's the hidden reason behind self-sabotage. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Self-sabotage doesn't show up as something obvious. It shows up as thoughts that sound completely logical. I'll start tomorrow. I'm too tired right now. I need to prepare more. I'll do it when I feel ready. And in the moment, these thoughts feel true. They don't feel like excuses. They feel like smart decisions. But they all have one thing in common. They delay action. And that delay keeps you stuck because your brain is trying to avoid discomfort. Not failure, discomfort. That slight resistance you feel when you're about to do something important, that's what your brain is trying to escape. So it creates these small, believable thoughts to keep you in your comfort zone. It's like your mind is a protective system, but instead of protecting you from real danger, it protects you from growth. Let's look at a simple example. You decide to start waking up early. The first day, you're motivated. You wake up on time. The second day, it's harder, but you still do it. By the third or fourth day, the alarm rings and suddenly your brain starts talking. Just sleep a little more. You didn't rest properly. You'll start again tomorrow. And just like that, the habit breaks. Not because you're weak, but because your brain is choosing comfort over change. Because waking up early is not yet part of your identity. It's something new. And your brain resists anything that feels unfamiliar. This brings us to one of the most important ideas. Self-sabotage is not about your goals. It's about your identity. Your brain always tries to stay consistent with how you see yourself. If deep down you believe, I'm someone who quits, I'm not consistent, I can't stick to things, then every time you try to change, your brain feels a conflict. Your actions are trying to move forward, but your identity is pulling you back. And your brain resolves that conflict by returning to what feels familiar. That's why motivation doesn't last, because motivation is temporary, but identity is permanent until you change it. Think about someone who says, I'm a healthy person. They don't struggle as much to exercise. They don't rely on motivation every day because it's part of who they are. But someone who believes, I'm lazy or I'm not disciplined, even small actions feel difficult because they're going against their identity, and your brain resists that. So if you want to stop self-sabotage, you don't just need better habits, you need a new identity. Now here's the real question. How do you change your identity? Not by thinking differently, but by proving something different to yourself. Your brain doesn't believe what you say, it believes what you do. Every action you take is like a vote for the kind of person you are. If you keep skipping, delaying, and quitting, you're reinforcing the identity of someone who doesn't follow through. But if you start showing up, even in small ways, you begin to shift that identity. And this is where the hack begins. So instead of trying to make big changes, start ridiculously small, so small that your brain doesn't resist it. If you want to work out, don't start with an hour. Start with 5 minutes. If you want to study, don't aim for 3 hours. Start with 10 minutes. Because the goal is not intensity, it's consistency. Small actions feel safe, and when something feels safe, your brain allows it. Over time, those small actions build momentum, and that momentum builds identity. Now let's talk about another hidden reason behind self-sabotage: fear of failure. But not just failure itself, it's the meaning you attach to failure. If you try something and fail, your brain might interpret it as I'm not good enough, and that thought is painful. So instead of risking that pain, your brain avoids trying fully. That's why you procrastinate. That's why you delay. Because if you don't fully try, you don't fully fail, and your identity stays protected. But at the same time, you don't grow. You stay in the same place. There's also something even more surprising: fear of success. Yes, success. Because success changes things. It brings new expectations, more responsibility, more pressure, and your brain might see that as overwhelming. So it keeps you in a place that feels manageable, even if it's not what you truly want. That's why sometimes right when things start going well, you suddenly lose momentum. You stop showing up. You fall back into old habits. It's not random. It's your brain trying to return to a level that feels safe. So how do you break free from this cycle? You don't fight your brain. You work with it. And that means understanding how it operates. Your brain responds to repetition, not motivation. It responds to familiarity, not pressure. It responds to safety, not force. First, make your actions smaller than your resistance. If something feels hard, shrink it. Lower the barrier so much that it feels almost too easy. Because starting is the hardest part. Once you start, your brain relaxes, and continuing becomes easier. This is how you bypass resistance. Second, remove the idea of perfection. Perfection is one of the biggest triggers for self-sabotage, because if something has to be perfect, your brain avoids starting, or it quits early when things don't go as planned. So instead of aiming for perfect, aim for progress. Messy action is always better than no action, because progress builds confidence, and confidence reduces resistance. Third, change your inner dialogue. The way you talk to yourself matters more than you think. If your inner voice constantly says, "You're lazy, you always quit, you're not capable," your brain will act accordingly. But if you start saying, "I'm learning to be consistent, I show up even when it's hard, I'm improving step by step," your brain starts aligning with that. Because your thoughts shape your identity, and your identity shapes your behavior. Fourth, stop waiting for motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. If you depend on it, you'll always be inconsistent. Instead, focus on action.
Take action even when you don't feel like it, because action creates motivation, not the other way around. Fifth, understand that discomfort is part of the process. It's not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is changing. The moment you stop avoiding discomfort, self-sabotage starts losing its power, because now your brain can't use discomfort as an excuse. Sixth, focus on systems instead of outcomes. Outcomes are far away. They don't keep you consistent. But systems, daily habits, those are immediate. They're within your control. So instead of focusing on results, focus on showing up, because results are just the outcome of repeated actions. Now imagine this version of you. You still feel resistance sometimes. You still have moments where you don't feel like